want it? Now, now. What do we want? Climate justice. When do we want it? Now, now.
The Global Initiative for Food Security and Ecosystem Preservation, in collaboration with civil society organizations, has called for concrete action to address climate change for climate justice in the country. The executive director of the Ecosystem Preservation made the call at the Africa Climate Caravan and Art Competition by 19 schools in the FCT in Abuja. The director said the event was organized by Ecosystem Preservation and supported by Oxfam. He said that the Climate Caravan was an initiative of Oxfam in Nigeria as part of the African Climate Caravan, bringing CSOs and climate-impacted communities together, demanding concrete climate action. According to him, the aim of the event is to unite all the CSOs in Africa to show that it is important to demand for climate justice considering the impact of climate change in the continent.
The essence of this is to unite CSOs across Africa and in Nigeria to demand for climate justice ahead of the COP27, which is holding in Egypt this week. It is very important that we demand for climate justice, considering the impact of climate change on our continent and our country, Nigeria. The art competition displayed by the students, you saw that the students are not ignorant of climate change impact in their community and even in the country as a whole. This is a very important issue. This year, we're all aware of how the floods impacted the country so badly. We lost people, over 600. So many households are still living in internally displaced persons camps. It is an issue of climate finance. We need money to tackle all of this. Good enough, the federal government has been signatory to all the international programs from the Paris Agreement. We now have the Climate Change Act. We have done a lot of policies, but what I think is lacking is the real action on the ground. For example, with the floods that took place, the response was very poor. It took weeks before help could get to people, especially in the states. And as the country goes into the presidential elections 2023, it is very important to interrogate the candidates to know who clearly has that climate action plan, considering the importance of climate change on our economy and on us as a people.
The Climate Justice Coordinator for Oxfam, Mr. Kenneth Abam, said the program was a collection of CSOs across each country in Africa. He urged the government to create strong awareness, thereby teaching the people possible measures to take to prevent flooding before the rainy season starts.
There was a need for us to come together and have a unified voice to, approach the climate change table so as to amplify the voices of Africans, particularly those vulnerable ones, people who we know as Africans, we suffer more of this climate change. Right now, there have been so many commitments by Nigerian government in putting policies in place to see that the Climate Change Act is being implemented. But here we want to see more action being done. It is a laudable approach by the government, but we want to see boots on ground. We want to see activities. Like the flooding just exposed us to the fact that the resilience, the preparedness, the response has been very poor. We need resilience. We need to teach our people to be ready. And also the government has to also be ready, because that is where we don't have an advantage compared to the developed countries. We are talking about preparedness to handle these climate change issues. So loss and damage and climate financing comes to prepare us for such emergencies, just like we had this year.
Miss Oluomatruku Okafor, a student of Government Girls' School, Duse, who spoke on behalf of other students, said the art activity the schools displayed was all about the effects and impacts of climate change in the environment.
What I did was on climate change. It was showing us how disastrous it was, how it caused insecurity, and how it affected us economically and agriculturally. If we could use the right method of ways to do things, I'm sure that climate change will not really affect us like that. And even if it did, we surely have a solution.